Hello and welcome back to my channel, Flicks with Nick. Today I am reviewing Fear Street 1978, the second movie in a new Netflix horror trilogy. Fear Street is based off the Fear Street novels written by R.L. Stine, who of course also wrote the more famous young adult horror series, Goosebumps. Instead of waiting years between sequels like most trilogies, Part 1 came out last Friday on Netflix, Part 2 comes out today, and the third and final movie in the Fear Street trilogy comes out next week. Last week I watched Fear Street Part 1 and I really enjoyed it. It fully captured the tone it was going for and it was a lot of fun to watch. Admittedly, I was even more excited to watch Part 2 than I was to watch Part 1, specifically due to its time period and its premise. Fear Street Part 2, or Fear Street 1978, is about a summer of fun that turns into a gruesome fight for survival as a killer terrorizes Camp Nightwing in the cursed town of Shadyside. I love this type of movie. If you've seen any of the other videos on my channel, you know this is right up my alley. A 70s set sleepaway camp slasher. I was so excited to watch this. But unfortunately, Fear Street 1978 was a bit of a letdown. Part 2 just wasn't as good as Part 1. Starting with the positives, Fear Street 1978 is certainly a similarly fun watch. It moves quickly, it's stylistic, there's creative camera work, there's flair, good music, cool lighting, and solid performances. At no point was I upset I decided to watch it. But overall, Part 2 just doesn't quite catch the 70s campground slasher tone, feel, or atmosphere. Part 1 did a great job in this area, mirroring 90s horror with its homages to movies like Scream. Part 2 came close but never landed. It never fully leaned into the pure campiness of a slasher like it needed to. Too much focus was placed in the wrong areas, and it felt like a Hollywood set more than a summer camp. There was a certain magic older slashers have that is hard to fully replicate, an unintentional cheese that adds to its charm. By being too pristine and sterile, you miss the mark of what makes a slasher work. Part 2 took itself too seriously, and as a result, it didn't feel like a classic slasher cheese fest. But at the same time, it still wasn't good enough to be a serious horror movie. It was kind of caught in no man's land. There was too much focus put on interpersonal drama and characters having heart-to-hearts. There's so many scenes of characters sitting down to explain their backstories, or character histories, or character conflicts, or exposition, or town lore, or town drama, or just how much they want to smooch each other. And at a certain point, I really didn't care. There was so much talking about trivial bullshit, and not enough action for this type of movie. I just wanted more scenes of the killer stalking campers. Speaking of kills, this movie certainly had bloody kills. I'll give it some credit, it does not shy away from the gore. The killer is walking around and brutally swinging his axe right into campers' faces. But as violent as it is, the CGI blood didn't give it that sense of authenticity. The kills lacked any real impact. Also, a good slasher isn't just about how bloody your kills are. It's not about trying to impress the audience by cutting off the head of a 12-year-old to appear rated R and edgy. A good slasher has creative, memorable kills. Kills that stick out in your head after viewing. And this movie has none of those. It's all repetitive whacks to the head again and again. The characters in Fear Street 1978 are pretty bland across the board. I really like the side characters in Part 1. Kate, Simon, and Josh were clearly identifiable, they had specific traits and motives, and they were very endearing and likable. But Part 2 had no fun, standout characters that I was rooting for or that I cared whether they lived or died. I watched this movie honestly 20 minutes ago, and I could not for the life of me name a character. The best I could do is say Britta or the girl from Stranger Things is in this. Again, overall, Fear Street 1978 was a disappointment. I gave it a lot of leeway. I, more than anyone, really wanted to enjoy this movie, to just sit back, turn off my brain, and enjoy a camp set slasher. But unfortunately, this just did not quite scratch that itch, and I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. If you liked Part 1, you'll, probably like this slightly less, maybe about the same, maybe more if you have a slightly different list of preferences. If you didn't like Part 1, I honestly see no reason why you would like this more. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing in terms of tone and style, but with just worse story and presentation. As I said, part 3 comes out next week. I'm not super excited to check that one out, not just because I was disappointed by part 2, but also because I'm not really super interested in the Salem witch trial story, but I'll probably still check it out. Let me know down in the comments if you are planning to watch part 3, or if you've seen part 1 or 2, and let me know if you agree, disagree with any of my opinions on those first 2 movies. If you stumbled upon this review, please consider subscribing to my channel, Flicks with Nick. I post horror reviews, rants, essays, and deep dives on Fridays. As well, on Mondays, I post 1-minute recommendations for horror movies available to watch on different streaming services like Netflix, Shudder, and Prime. Thank you for watching my review of Fear Street 1978, and I'll see you next week.